The lights were blinding, the cameras were rolling. Millions of Americans were glued to their screens, waiting for sparks to fly. And then he struck. Donald Trump leaned forward into the microphone with that familiar smirk, the one that always seemed to say, "I own this room." His voice cut through the silence like a dagger. The words weren't just sharp. They were designed to wound an insult aimed straight at Barack Obama. He thought it would humiliate him, strip him down, make him beg for approval. For a split second, the air in the studio froze. The crowd didn't laugh, they didn't clap, they just waited. Everyone knew this was more than politics. This was theater, this was power, this was ego colliding with legacy. And in that pause, in that unbearable silence, all eyes turned to Obama. Would he fight fire with fire? Would he lash out? Get angry? Let Trump drag him into the mud? That's what the former president's critics expected. That's what Trump wanted. But then something unexpected happened. Obama didn't move. He didn't even blink. His calm expression almost looked amused, as if the insult had bounced off him like a paper ball hitting a stone wall. He leaned back in his chair, adjusted his posture, simply waited. The audience didn't know it yet, but they were seconds away from witnessing one of the most devastating live TV takedowns in modern history, a moment that would leave Donald Trump rattled, humiliated, and scrambling for footing. And here's the thing, Obama didn't need rage. He didn't need theatrics. He was about to do something far more powerful, turn Trump's own arrogance into his downfall. The tension was unbearable. You could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone in that room and on the millions watching at home. Social media timelines froze. News anchors leaned in. America held its breath, and then Obama finally opened his mouth. What he said next would flip the entire confrontation upside down, trigger a storm across the country, and prove once again that calm dignity always outlasts empty bravado. But before we get to that jaw-dropping moment, you need to understand why this clash mattered so much, and why the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Asterisk, the stage wasn't just a stage, it was a battlefield. Every word, every gesture, every pause in that room was a weapon. And on that night, millions of Americans weren't just watching a debate, they were watching two visions of America collide. Donald Trump knew it. That's why he went in swinging. His goal wasn't just to win an argument, it was to dominate, to humiliate, to rewrite the narrative in real time. He wasn't debating issues. He was attacking identity, legacy, dignity, and his target was Barack Obama. For years, Trump had mocked him. From late-night interviews to campaign rallies, Trump's insults had become almost ritual, questioning Obama's background, belittling his achievements, chipping away at his very legitimacy. And now, live on stage, with millions watching. He went for the knockout punch. But here's what Trump underestimated. This wasn't just about one insult. This wasn't just about embarrassing a former president on TV. This moment had weight. Because Barack Obama wasn't just another politician. To millions of Americans, he represented something bigger, the idea that dignity and intelligence could overcome hatred and division. He symbolized hope in the face of cynicism, calm in the face of chaos, and when Trump tried to reduce him to a punchline, the stakes skyrocketed. The audience didn't just hear an insult. They felt the echo of years of division, resentment, and political theater. They saw arrogance staring down calm. They saw the showman versus the statesman. And the question was simple. Who would win? Would America side with the man who shouted the loudest, who wielded mockery like a sword? Or with the man who embodied composure, who believed silence could sometimes be the sharpest weapon of all? The crowd leaned in, sensing history unfolding. This wasn't just about two men. It was about the future of political discourse, the very soul of leadership. And yet, through it all, Obama didn't flinch. He didn't rush his response. He didn't take Trump's bait. Instead, he let the tension grow heavier and heavier, until even Trump seemed uneasy in his own skin. Because here's the secret about power. True power doesn't shout. True power doesn't scramble to be heard. True power waits and lets the silence speak louder than the insult. And in that silence, Something remarkable was building. Viewers at home could feel it. The crowd in the studio could feel it. Even Trump, though he'd never admit it, could feel it. This wasn't just a delay. It was a setup. Obama was crafting a response that would not only dismantle Trump's attack, but expose the emptiness behind it. The moment was almost here. And when it came, it wouldn't just flip the room. It would send shockwaves across the entire nation. Because sometimes the most devastating blow doesn't come from anger, but from a single, unshakable truth. To understand why this clash on live TV mattered so much, you first have to understand the man who sparked it, Donald J. Trump. From the moment he entered politics, Trump branded himself as larger than life, a billionaire tycoon, a reality TV star, a man who claimed he could bend the world to his will simply by speaking louder than everyone else in the room. And in many ways, he thrived on that chaos. He didn't debate, he dominated. He didn't persuade, he performed. He wielded insults like weapons, testing how far shock value could carry him. And for a time it worked. Crowds cheered. Headlines followed. Cameras pointed his way no matter what came out of his mouth. But beneath that showmanship was something else. A pattern, a strategy, an addiction. Trump's rise wasn't built on facts or policy. It was built on spectacle. The bigger the stage, the more outrageous the performance. And in every confrontation, there was always a target. Someone he could ridicule, belittle, or paint as weak. Because for Trump, politics was never about ideas. It was about dominance. And no one symbolized the challenge to that dominance more than Barack Obama. Years before this live TV showdown, Trump had launched one of his most infamous crusades, questioning Obama's very identity, the so-called birther movement. He repeated it over and over, fueling conspiracy theories, demanding proof, and suggesting, without evidence, that the first black president of the United States might not even belong in the White House. It was cruel. It was baseless. But it revealed something deeper about Trump's playbook. He didn't just attack what people did. He attacked who they were, and in that strategy, arrogance became his armor. When confronted, he doubled down. When fact-checked, he laughed it off. When challenged, he made the challenge itself look ridiculous. It was the reality show mindset, dragged into the heart of American politics. But arrogance is a fragile shield. It looks powerful till it cracks. Because here's the thing. The same traits that made Trump a spectacle also made him vulnerable. His obsession with control, his hunger for attention, his inability to let go of a slight. These were not signs of strength. They were cracks waiting to split open. And that night, live on stage, those cracks were beginning to show. Trump came in confident, believed another insult would land, that another smirk would win the crowd. He thought humiliating Obama would be easy, because it had always worked before. But what he didn't realize was that Obama wasn't just another opponent. He wasn't another politician scrambling to outshout him. It was someone who understood the psychology of power. Someone who knew that dignity could be sharper than any insult. The stage was set. Trump had played his usual role the loudest. Voice, the biggest ego, the villain, ready to mock and dominate, but this time, something was different. The crowd wasn't laughing with him. The silence after his jab wasn't approval, it was anticipation. His insult hadn't landed like a punchline. It had hung in the air, flat, awkward, heavy, and as the camera panned back to Obama's calm face, something subtle shifted. Trump was still talking, still gesturing, still trying to fill the silence with noise. But in that moment, it was already clear he wasn't in control anymore. For a man who thrived on applause, nothing is more dangerous than silence. Nothing is more terrifying than realizing the audience isn't laughing. They're waiting for the other guy to speak. And that's the weakness Trump never saw coming. His arrogance had carried him this far. But arrogance unchecked always sets the stage for downfall. And this time, that downfall was about to be televised to millions of people across the country. Because sometimes the villain writes his own defeat, and the only thing the hero has to do is... If Trump was the showman fueled by chaos, then Barack Obama was his perfect opposite, the calm in the storm. To understand why Obama's response on that stage mattered so much, you need to understand the man behind the moment, Barack Hussein. Obama, too, didn't rise to power because of privilege, wealth, or family legacy. His story began worlds away from marble halls and golden towers. Born to a Kenyan father and a white mother from Kansas, Obama grew up navigating questions of identity, belonging, and purpose. He wasn't handed a spotlight. He had to earn it, step by step, speech by speech, action by action. Those early struggles shaped him. They forged a quiet resilience. As a young man in Chicago, he walked the neighborhoods that politicians forgot, organizing communities that felt voiceless. He wasn't chasing cameras, wasn't chasing headlines. He was chasing change, often with nothing more than a clipboard, a pen, and a conviction that people deserve to be heard. That's where he learned his greatest lesson. Real leadership doesn't scream. It listens. And when he carried that philosophy into politics, America noticed. The speeches that lifted him from obscurity to the national stage weren't fueled by insults or mockery. They were fueled by vision, by the belief that words could heal, could inspire, could unite. By the time Obama became president, the world already knew his strength wasn't just in policy or politics. It was in composure. When critics shouted, he stayed measured. When opposition attacked, he smiled and let the weight of dignity do the work. That night on live TV, facing Trump's insult, Obama was once again relying on that discipline, the same discipline that had carried him from obscurity to the White House. Because here's the truth. Obama had faced far worse than Donald Trump's words. He had endured years of relentless attacks, questioning his identity, his birthplace, his legitimacy. Entire media cycles were built on trying to delegitimize him, and yet he never cracked, never lost his composure. That restraint wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Obama understood something his critics never did. The loudest voice isn't always the strongest. Sometimes the calmest presence in the room is the one people remember most, and that's exactly why Trump underestimated him. Trump believed his insult would knock Obama off balance, force him to defend himself, or drag him into a shouting match. But Obama's life had been a masterclass in not taking the bait. From the classrooms of Harvard Law, where he learned to dismantle arguments with precision, to the Oval Office, where every word was measured under the weight of history, Obama had trained for moments like this. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to match arrogance with arrogance. All he needed to do was wait. That silence on stage wasn't hesitation. It was preparation. He was calculating, setting the trap, letting Trump's own arrogance dig the hole deeper and deeper. And the more Trump talked, the more obvious it became. The contrast was glaring. One man loud, desperate, clawing for dominance. The other man composed, patient, quietly holding the upper hand. The truth is, Obama didn't have to fight Trump on Trump's terms. Because dignity, once unleashed, is more devastating than any insult. And that's why this live TV moment was so powerful. It wasn't just about politics. It was about two archetypes colliding. The arrogant showman versus the disciplined statesman. Ego versus dignity. Noise versus calm. Obama had been preparing for this clash his entire life, not knowingly. But through every trial he had endured, the hate, the doubt, the conspiracies, the attacks, all of it built an armor that arrogance could never penetrate. And when the cameras zoomed in that night, the world saw it. They saw a man who could take an insult designed to humiliate and flip it into something unforgettable. The audience didn't know it yet, but they were seconds away from watching Obama use every ounce of that composure, every lesson, every hardship, every moment of restraint to deliver a response that would dismantle Trump's insult and leave him scrambling in front of millions. Because while Trump thrived on spectacle, Obama thrived on timing. And the timing was about to be perfect. The room was waiting. America was waiting. Obama was ready. And when he finally spoke, it wouldn't just be an answer. It would be a takedown for the ages. The insult had been delivered. The silence had stretched across the room like a held breath. But Trump wasn't finished. He leaned in harder, sensing the attention shift, trying desperately to keep the spotlight on himself. His voice grew sharper, his gestures more animated. He repeated the jab, then twisted it, layering on exaggerations, trying to wring laughter out of the audience that never came. It was a familiar pattern, the way a bully doubles down when the first punch doesn't land. But in that doubling down, something was changing. The energy in the room was tilting, because while Trump's words grew louder, Obama's silence grew heavier. He didn't interrupt, didn't protest, simply watched, the faintest trace of a smile on his face, as if he already knew where this was going. The cameras caught it. The crowd noticed it. And slowly, the dynamic shifted. Instead of a leader in control, Trump began to look like a man unraveling. His voice rose, his hands flailed, and the more he talked, the clearer it became that he was filling the silence out of fear of what might come next. And then the interruptions started. Every time Obama leaned toward the mic, Trump cut him off. He couldn't allow him to speak. He couldn't give him space, because somewhere deep down, Trump sensed the danger. One sentence from Obama could undo minutes of bluster, but the interruptions only made things worse, the audience murmured. The moderators frowned. Social media began to buzz, though, and through it all, Obama waited. He let Trump burn himself out, let him reach higher and higher for dominance until the performance tipped into desperation. The tension was unbearable. Each second stretched like an eternity. Viewers at home weren't just watching a debate anymore. They were watching a live countdown to an explosion, because they knew. They could feel it. Obama's silence wasn't weakness. It was a loaded weapon, waiting for the perfect moment to fire. And when that moment came, it'd be devastating. The escalation had reached its peak. Trump was nearly shouting now, the rhythm of his words breaking, his frustration bubbling to the surface. He had gone from smirking confidence to frantic overexertion, and everyone could see it. Obama leaned back, calm as ever. He adjusted his tie. He tapped the microphone once, slowly, deliberately, almost as if to signal, "It's my turn now." The audience leaned forward. The moderators fell silent. Even Trump hesitated just for a second, realizing he had opened the door too wide, and then, at last, Barack Obama leaned into the mic. What he said next wouldn't just answer Trump's insult, it would dismantle his entire performance, expose the emptiness behind the bluster, flip the entire narrative of the night. It was the moment America had been waiting for. And when it came, it would leave Donald Trump visibly rattled, the crowd electrified, and millions of viewers in shock. The room was electric, the tension so thick you could almost feel it pressing against your chest. For minutes, Donald Trump had been circling, barking insults, filling the air with noise. His smirk had slipped, replaced by agitation, but he pressed on because silence, Obama's silence, was the one thing he couldn't handle. And then at last, Barack Obama leaned forward. No rush, no anger, just deliberate calm. He adjusted the microphone, looked straight into Trump's eyes, and let the silence stretch one beat longer, long enough for the audience to hold its breath. And then he spoke. "Donald," he began, his voice steady, almost amused. "Every time you open your mouth, you prove my point better than I ever could." The crowd erupted. Gasps, laughter, applause. The sound was deafening. Even the moderators couldn't suppress their smiles. Obama paused, letting the reaction wash over the room. His timing was flawless, like a comedian who knew exactly when to let the punchline breathe. But this wasn't comedy. This was demolition. Trump tried to interject, his hand shooting up, his voice cutting across the noise, but it was too late. The balance of power had shifted. The room wasn't his anymore. Obama leaned back slightly, then leaned in again, lowering his voice so the cameras, the audience, and millions at home had to lean in too. "You've built your whole career." He continued, on insults, on cheap shots, on tearing people down. But here's the thing. Leadership isn't about who shouts the loudest. It's about who stands tallest when the shouting stops. Another wave of applause, another chorus of cheers. Trump's face flushed. His mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time that night, he looked cornered, and Obama wasn't done. "See, I don't need to question your background or your legitimacy or whether you belong here," he said, his tone cutting but calm. "Because the truth is, every time you speak, the American people can already see who you are." It was a blade wrapped in velvet, not shouted, not screamed. Just spoken with the precision of a surgeon making the decisive cut. The crowd exploded again. Laughter, applause, shouts of, "That's right," from the audience. Trump tried to push back. "Wrong, wrong, that's fake, you don't know." But his voice was drowned out. The cameras caught it, his hand waving frantically, his words tumbling over themselves. His composure cracking under the weight of a single devastating response. Obama smiled. Just a small, quiet smile. He didn't need to say much more. The job was already done. But he delivered one last blow, the finishing touch. "And Donald," he said, leaning back with perfect ease, "if you think you can humiliate me on live television, let me save you some time. It looks like you're the only one leaving here humiliated tonight." Mic drop. The crowd lost it. Thunderous applause. People on their feet. Even some of Trump's supporters were stunned into silence. Social media lit up instantly. Clips, GIFs, memes flooding timelines within seconds. Trump sat back, his face red, his expression tight, his attempt at a smirk collapsing under the weight of what had just happened. For a man who thrived on dominance, the loss of control was unbearable. And Obama. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His calm demeanor was the victory. The more he stayed composed, the more Trump's chaos looked small, desperate, and weak. The moment was historic, not just because of the words, but because of the contrast. One man shouted, the other spoke. One man demanded attention, the other commanded it. One man grew louder, the other grew stronger. And in that contrast, the entire nation saw the difference between arrogance and dignity, between noise and leadership. The debate wasn't over, but in many ways, it was already decided. The narrative had shifted. Obama had done what so few managed to do. He had turned Trump's greatest weapon, his bravado, into his downfall. The clip would be replayed endlessly. Headlines would immortalize it. Commentators would call it one of the greatest live TV takedowns of modern politics. And in living rooms across America, people would remember exactly how they felt in that moment. The shock, the satisfaction, the sense of witnessing something unforgettable. Because this wasn't just a rebuttal. This wasn't just a line. It was a reminder that in the face of arrogance, dignity still wins. And as the applause roared on, the ripple effect was only just beginning. The debate stage was still buzzing. The crowd's reaction hadn't quieted, in fact. It was only growing louder, feeding on itself like a wave that refused to break. But outside those walls, in the homes of millions watching live, the shockwaves were already beginning. The clip of Obama's final line, "Looks like you're the only one leaving, here humiliated tonight," hit social media within seconds. Twitter exploded first. Hashtags trended instantly. Hashtag Obama mic drop, hashtag Trump. Shook hashtag live on TV commentators couldn't type fast enough. One viral tweet read, "Ladies and gentlemen, that's how you handle a bully. .com/precise. Brutal." Racked up half. 1 million likes in an hour, memes followed. By the next morning, there were GIFs of Obama leaning into the mic. Captions overlaid like "when you end the group chat argument once and for all." TikTok edits sprang up with dramatic soundtracks, slow-motion replays set to drum beats, cinematic scores, even rap anthems. But it wasn't just online. News anchors broke from their scripts to acknowledge what had just happened. On cable news, one panelist laughed mid-broadcast and said, "I think we just saw the moment Donald Trump lost the room." Clips played on loop across networks. Pundits debated whether it was the single greatest takedown in modern political debate history. Late-night hosts cleared their monologues to riff on the moment, each joke sharpening the narrative that Obama had dismantled Trump without breaking a sweat, and the reactions weren't only partisan. Even some conservatives caught on hot mics, admitted the strike landed harder than anything they'd seen in years. One commentator muttered, "You know, say what you want about the guy, but that was lethal." Meanwhile, Trump himself spiraled. His campaign scrambled to spin the moment, releasing frantic statements, calling Obama disrespectful, accusing moderators of bias, even hinting at conspiracy. But the damage was done. The internet had already chosen its narrative, and no press release could undo it. Crowd reactions became their own story. Videos from inside the hall showed audience members standing, pointing, cheering, some covering their mouths in disbelief. A freeze frame of Trump's stunned face became the meme of the week. By sunrise the next day, YouTube compilations had millions of views. Top 10 savage Obama takedowns. Obama versus Trump. The moment he destroyed him, the mic drop. Seen around the world, each clip added more gasoline to the fire. Internationally, headlines carried the moment across oceans. British newspapers splashed it across their front pages. Commentators in Europe called it a masterclass in composure. In Asia, the clips were subtitled and trending on Weibo. It wasn't just an American story anymore. It was a global one, and perhaps the most powerful reaction came not from pundits or politicians, but from everyday people. Parents shared the clip with their kids, saying, "This is how you deal with a bully. You don't scream, you don't fight dirty. You stay calm, and you let the truth speak louder than the noise." College students blasted it on campus screens, turning debate night into a viral watch party. Teachers played it in classrooms as a lesson in rhetoric, in patience, in the power of staying composed under pressure. For many, it was more than entertainment. It was personal. People who had felt belittled, bullied, or dismissed saw themselves in that moment. Obama's calm takedown became their victory too, proof that dignity can beat arrogance. Patience can outlast bluster. The truth doesn't need volume to win. The shockwaves kept spreading. Hour after hour, headline after headline, and the story wasn't about policy or fact checks anymore. It was about a single unforgettable exchange, a collision between arrogance and dignity. And the decisive moment when dignity won, and as America woke up the next day, the question wasn't, who won the debate anymore? It was, did we just witness the end of Trump's dominance on live television? When the shouting fades and the memes slow down, something deeper remains, as this moment was never just about two men on a stage. It was about what their clash revealed. The difference between noise and truth, between arrogance and dignity, between bluster and real leadership. Obama's mic drop wasn't simply a comeback. It was a reminder that the strongest voice in the room isn't always the loudest one. Sometimes it's the calmest, the one that refuses to bow to provocation, the one that lets composure outlast chaos. In that instant, the nation saw it. Truth too often forgotten. Dignity doesn't need to shout to be heard. For millions of Americans, the moment felt personal. It spoke to anyone who's ever been underestimated. Anyone who's been mocked, belittled, or told they didn't belong. Watching Obama hold his ground, not with anger, but with precision, was more than politics. It was a mirror. It said, you don't have to fight fire with fire. I can stand taller, calmer, and still win. And that struck a chord across generations. Parents replayed it for their kids, not as political theater, but as a lesson in character. Teachers framed it as an example of how to confront hostility with clarity, not rage. College students clipped it as motivation, a reminder that truth, armed with patience, is unshakable. It was bigger than a debate stage. It was about what kind of America people want to believe in. One America, represented by arrogance, where insults replace ideas and division fuels power. It's the other America represented by dignity, where calm courage silences the noise, and respect holds more weight than rage. And in that moment, millions chose. It's not in a ballot box, but in their hearts. They chose to cheer for the dignity, the composure, the voice that spoke without screaming. Even critics had to admit, what America witnessed wasn't just political theater. It was a statement that leadership isn't measured by volume. It's measured by restraint, by clarity, by the ability to turn an attack into a teaching moment. Because here's the truth. Debates end. Campaigns fade. Elections pass. But moments like this, they echo. They get replayed, shared, remembered. They become part of the cultural memory, not because of who scored a point, but because of what the moment meant. Obama's response reminded Americans of a simple, timeless lesson. When faced with arrogance, you don't have to match it. You can rise above it. Out! You can hold your ground without losing your grace. And in the long run, that's what leaves the deepest mark. It's why the clip kept replaying, why it kept trending. Because it wasn't just about Obama versus Trump. It was about dignity versus disrespect, calm versus chaos, America versus the noise, trying to drown it, and for millions watching. The message was clear. Dignity wins. Patience wins. America, at its best, wins. That's why the story resonated far beyond one night on live TV, because it reminded people that arrogance is temporary, but dignity is lasting. Bluster fades, but truth echoes. And perhaps in the silence after, the applause, that was the real mic drop. And so we circle back to where we began. The headline said it all. Obama destroys Trump on live TV. He never saw this coming. But now you've seen what this really was. Not just a clapback. Not just a viral debate moment, but a defining reminder that in the chaos of politics, there's still room for clarity. That in the middle of insults, dignity can still speak louder than rage. The crowd may have roared. The hashtags may have trended, but the moment's real power wasn't in the spectacle. It was in the silence that followed. The silence of a man humbled on live television and the silence of millions watching, realizing they had just witnessed something rare. Brew landing like a thunderclap. This wasn't just history. It's a lesson. It's a lesson for anyone who's ever been underestimated. It's a lesson for anyone who's ever been told they weren't enough. It's a lesson that composure beats chaos, and dignity will always outlast arrogance. Because in the end, the greatest destruction isn't loud, it's quiet, it's calm. It's undeniable, and that's why this clip will be replayed, remembered, and shared for years to come. If you believe in dignity over arrogance, if you believe in truth over noise, if you believe in moments like this, then don't. Just watch. Be part of it. Hit subscribe. Share this story. Join the movement of voices who refuse to be silenced by bluster. Because this wasn't just Obama versus Trump. This was dignity versus arrogance. And once again, dignity won.